Thank you very much, Barak, and good morning to everyone, and welcome back. So my name is Pierre Dandjinou, VP Africa for ICANN, and this panel actually is going to do a few things. First, it's going to be about introducing the report, and the report on the Africa Domain Name System Market Study that was commissioned, and then in 2016. And we do have our experts, that did that study. They are going to report on it. And also, we are going to hear from Serge. Serge is from Burkina Faso, but he will be talking on behalf of the Collège International of the Francophonie. They did some work there, so that we do have what I might call comprehensive sort of picture of the domain name system in Africa. But then the second phase for me is going to be what we are calling the observatory for the domain name, system in Africa. As far as we are concerned at ICANN, the whole idea of launching this study, came, of course, after the we realized that we didn't have enough, statistics or data the domain name system in Africa, and that was actually a project that we discussed with our partners. FTLD, for instance, from the beginning has been part of this, and ISOC. So we plan to have this, study done together. It didn't work out the way we wanted for some other reasons that we're not going to develop here. Anyhow, we launched the study as ICANN. And now we do have a result here. We are going to be presented by William and Mark. Certainly, they are going to tell us about the issues they've been facing to come up with this. It is a premiere. It's a kind of first study. It's the first of its kind. And quickly, I would like to also say that report, in fact, the pre-report was presented in. I don't know which country anyway, but that was in Morocco, I think. Was it Morocco? No. No? Anyway, in one of the ICANN meetings, I forgot the Copenhagen, yes. Yeah. It was a pre-sort of report, so we want, and then we posted this report, or the draft report was posted online, and so that we do get your remarks. I have to say that we were expecting, we didn't have much, of those comments, per se, but you let me know. Here again, you do have maybe an opportunity to kind of come up with whatever comments you may have. But the whole idea here is just to present this to you, because this is the 2016, study. And it's already posted as a final report, so we are not going to change it now. We may go through some updates, every year, but we are going to discuss this together. And then on the observatory, a few ideas have been there, a few suggestions, and we'll be coming back on that later on. Of course, we also have, like I said, Serge is here, going to talk about the Collège Francophone, which is a group of Francophone countries in Africa. They did some work. He's going to talk about that one in 5-10 minutes. And Pierre Bonis, who is the acting CEO of AfNIC, AfNIC being the .fr French, registry. Much interested also in the observatory, has a few ideas on this, so we really want to give him an opportunity to actually commit also on the observatory, because he has a check to write. So thank you very much for that, and then I would like to open it up to Mark and William, so that they take us through the report, and of course we'll have some time for discussions. So please, William, when you're ready.
Thank you, Pierre. I will introduce ourselves as we go along, but we're going to tell you about the African Domain Name System Market Study. We call it 2016 because that's when it started, but it actually took 16 months. It was quite a large job to do. In terms of the background and scope, we addressed all 54 African countries, including the 6 Indian and Atlantic Ocean islands. And we were looking to identify the strengths and weaknesses in the industry ecosystem in the region and to develop some recommendations on how to advance the industry and explore options for establishing a DNS observatory. And we're going to address all of those during the course of this discussion. The graphic there shows you the cost per megabit per second in US purchase pricing parity, and the darker colors are the more expensive countries. So you can see there in the center of Africa, just sub-Saharan and Saharan region is the most expensive. Africa is much bigger than most people think it is. Okay, there are 54 countries in one continent, and you can fit in to Africa the whole of the continental United States and China and Mexico and India and Western Europe and the Iberian Peninsula and Japan. So that this really is a big place. So it's not surprising that there are such huge differences between the different countries in Africa. The people involved in this were from these 4 organizations, and it was done under the banner of the SACF, the South African Communications Forum. I'm William Stucke, and I led the team, and this is Mark Elkins, and he did all the technical magic that made it possible. And we will both be talking to you today. In terms of our methodology, we had 4 different ways of approaching the problem. First of all, we had an online survey, which had 4 languages, English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic. And yes, the Arabic read from right to left. And it was a totally database-driven dynamic website with 6 different questionnaires for registries, registrants, registrars, resellers, regulators, and IXB managers. Am I speaking too fast, translator, or are you coping? Internet Exchange Point. Internet Exchange Point. We did look at resellers and registrars as 2 separate entities because there are 2 different models and they can act differently, although in many cases the questions were in fact the same. We also looked at zone file analysis. We looked at both country code and GTLD zone files, and we identified significant websites, those domains that had significant websites, and we then looked at those further, and we identified their location, their language, and we didn't do any Whois lookups to do this. We didn't have anywhere near enough data in terms of zone files to be able to do this properly, but Affilius was one of the entities that was very helpful to us in providing data on 20 GTLDs. We also interviewed a number of key players and asked questions, and of course we do have in our team, we have people with significant DNS experience stretching over decades in Africa, so we interviewed ourselves to an extent too, if you like. We also did an awful lot of Googling, and we filled in the gaps in our data by addressing all of these issues. And we looked at different metrics for every domain that we identified, the location, the language, whether it uses IPv6, whether it uses DNSSEC, and so on. And we created regional subsets, and we looked at whether the websites are hosted in the country, elsewhere in Africa, or overseas, and we analyzed by region and by language. In terms of our findings,
yeah, the way we're playing this, if you see WFS in the bottom right-hand corner, the bottom left-hand corner, it's him, and if it's MJE, it's me. Anyway, on with the findings. Yes, so we come from a very, very diverse region. Different incomes, literacy, language, culture development, etc., all varying widely. Lagging in internet access, we're running at a 28.9% average, whereas the average for the rest of the world is 54%, so we're way behind. And penetration ranges from 1% in places like Eritrea to 80% in places like Kenya. So a huge range of penetration. The high cost of the internet access, William's already gone through that, with some places costing huge amounts. The point behind this, though, is the average European will spend 1% of his income on internet access, and in order to get something similar, you're looking at 15% of an average African income. There's very few local hosting facilities which can be deemed as being good, and the majority of access seems to be via smartphones rather than via computer systems. The problem behind this is it results in an overly low demand on domain names. We have our African rising slide. So yes, internet penetration is increasing. It's increased from 11 to 29% in the last 5 years. We're selling an awful lot more smartphones, doubled. More than 2/3 of African countries had 10 or more years of uninterrupted economic growth for the century. We are amongst the world's fastest growing economies, and we have a large number of innovation hubs, and we have relatively recent an awful lot of fibre coming into the continent and around the continent. So the fibre around the coast is great. Interesting enough, 2 countries do not have fibre, Guinea-Bissau and Eritrea, and that shows in the stats when you start looking at how many domains and stuff they've got. Landlocked countries all have access obviously via terrestrial fibre, and there's deemed to be about 1 million kilometres of terrestrial fibre growing every day. Local access, there is a bit of FTTX, FTTH, FTT to the curb, etc., and Wi-Fi, but the majority of the people seem to be using mobile access, which is unfortunately expensive in most parts of Africa. IXPs and data centers, they're deemed to be 36 fully operational IXPs in 26 countries. That is Internet Exchange Points. And Internet Exchange Points we feel are actually quite important to the success of domain names. IP resources, 2% of all the V4 in the world is here, along with 1% of all the V6 in the world is here.
Compare that with 15% of the world's population.
Understanding the regional's internet ecosystem, the policies, regulations and governance. We believe that the separation of policymaker and the regulator and the registry, it's a very important step. You can't have the person, the players of the team being both the referee and the rule maker. It does not make sense. And so we recognize and we encourage the great growth of ISP, Internet Service Providers Associations, and there's this horrible trend in Africa, though, of interrupting the internet during elections when there's a bit of unrest, which we don't like. It's against human rights and it costs the economy quite a lot. It might not be a full shutdown of internet, it might just be partial, but it still is happening. And we seem to have this thing about elections and turning off Facebook access at the moment. Content. 75% of the 40 million pages indexed from Africa are in just 7 African countries. E-commerce and governments, we believe that these are key drivers for internet and DNS adoption. To me, the success story there is you look at Kenya, they set up an exchange point. It was initially not allowed. If you look at Kenya now, the exchange point is booming, and the Kenyan government is doing e-everything, it would seem, including e-visas.
On that second point, I just want to emphasize that it's important that the policymaker and the regulator and the registry and particularly the policymaker and the regulator, recognise and engage with the ISP associations, because they are the players who are going to who make the industry work to a very large extent.
So we came across 51 functioning CCTLDs out of the 54 countries we looked at. The registrar market, 26 countries only seem to have one registrar, which would normally be the registry itself. 13 countries at the time have a fully competitive registrar market. By fully competitive registrar market, we're suggesting that it's a 3R model system: registry, registrar, registrant, and there would be multiple registrars in that country.
And EPP.
Obviously running things like EPP in a 3R model, that's a given, I think. The registrant market, there are about 5 million African domain names if you look at both CCTLD and GTLD. It's 5.5.
Yeah.
5.5 in total. So that's adding the .coms in with the rest of the CCTLDs, effectively .coms, which is, it comes down to about 4.4 domains per 1,000 population. This has a value to the economy of Africa of around about $52 million US per year. So it's nothing to be sneezed at, but that is the whole system.
In terms of key outcomes, we scored all 54 countries, and we've shown on this, in this table the top 20 countries with their scores and color-coded for language and region. You can see that 5 out of the 6 regions are in the top 6 places, so there's no focus anywhere in particular in terms of regions. In terms of language, the situation is a little bit difficult and different, and you can see the clustering of colors there. In order to rank those countries, we used these different criteria. We counted the number of domains registered under the CCTLD that we were able to identify. We counted the number of GTLD domains that we were able to identify as having an African registrant. We counted the number of web pages indexed by Google under each of those CCTLDs. We looked at the price of registration, where lower was better. We looked at the number of registrars. We looked at the number of locally hosted websites. We produced a figure of merit derived from the presence of one or more functioning Internet exchange points, and we looked at the Internet usage as a percentage of the population. And then what we did is, for each of those 8 items, we ranked the country from best to worst. And so if you were best, you got 54 points, and that's the total score there. And there's obviously no one scored a perfect score. And if you were worst, you got a 1. And so we just put everything there, and that helped us to condense the enormous range between different countries. You know, when you have a country that has 103 domains, and you have another country that has over 1 million domains, you can't say the one is 10,000 times better than the other one, but it is definitely better to some extent. So in terms of looking at all those things, we looked at the number of domains registered under the CCTLDs, and you can see at the bottom of the scale we have South Africa with the most, and Comores and Eritrea and Guinea-Bissau and Chad at the top with very few. But you also see that there are 4 countries with quite a lot of domains at the bottom there. And they are Gabon, Central African Republic, Equatorial Guinea, and Mali. Now, these countries are, in fact, countries that do not operate their own registry. Their registry is operated by an organization called Freenom, and there was a reference to this yesterday. They do not sell domains. They lend you domains. So they give away a domain for free, but if you are making money out of that domain, they will take it away from you. And if you and put advertising on it, and the domains that expire, that are abandoned, they also put advertising on it, and then they share a percentage of the income from that with the with the country involved. And this model was pioneered in Tokulu, which is a little island in the middle of the ocean that has a population of 15,000 people, but has, what's the figure?
It's the second largest.
It's the second largest. It's more than Germany. It's 18 million domains. 18 million domains. Now, that makes up 20% of the GDP of Tokulu, with 18 million domains. However, these countries have only got a 500,000 domain each, and they have a population slightly more than 15,000 people. So it distorts the figures significantly and does not give any significant benefit to those 4 African countries. So the next graph shows you the same thing, with those countries excluded. And in most cases, we did exclude those countries from our statistics because they had a very distorting effect. In terms of the GTLD domains with an African registrant, this is one of several graphics, and you can see here that there are a lot of the ranking there. And notice that Nigeria comes second, and this is perhaps partially because Nigeria has a very large population, but also because there is a certain amount of distrust of the .ng domain due to the 419 issues. But where the countries have a lot of international registrations, it means one of two things. It either means that they have a very vibrant internet economy, or it means that there's a problem with registering local domains. And so you can see both of those factors happening here. In terms of the number of web pages Googled by indexed by Google, these figures were taken on November last year. You can see quite a significant variation there as well. In terms of price of registration, I'm going to show you 2 graphs of this. There's a big difference between, in some cases, between registering a domain with a local registrar when you are a local and when you're registering it via an international registrar when you're not necessarily a local. And so you can see, for example, down the bottom left-hand corner there, we've got South Africa in the bottom left, but Kenya is way more expensive to register via an international registrar than it is to register locally. And this is a function of the fact that we believe that international registrars can't operate in Kenya. And so this is perhaps why Kenya does not sell as many domains as South Africa, for example. We have a specific comparison between those 2 countries in a later slide. And so ranking them by the lowest price altogether, you'll see in fact that Tunisia and Kenya have the lowest prices overall, followed by South Africa, whereas we have places selling domains for $300 each. And needless to say, they don't sell very many. In terms of the number of registrars, the successful countries have more registrars, and by doing an analysis of the number of domains versus the number of registrars, there seems to be an inflection point in the graphics that says that if you've got more than about 20 to 25 registrars, you're going to be selling a lot more domains. Alternatively, you could also interpret it by saying if you're selling a lot of domains, you're going to have more registrars. Which is the cause or which is the effect, I'm not sure, but generally speaking, the 26 countries that only have one registrar don't sell many domains. In terms of the number of locally hosted websites, this is as a percentage, and we can see that Libya scores very highly, but that is in fact only 18 domains. So it's a bit of a misnomer from a percentage point of view. In terms of the growth of internet exchange points, this is a very important graph, and we cannot overemphasize the importance of an exchange point in a country. We found a total of 66 exchange points listed in Africa by various lists. But when we analyzed those exchange points in more detail, we found that 30 of them were not functional. And by functional, we mean that there has to be a minimum of 3 peers exchanging significant amounts of traffic. So there is one wonderful example Mark will tell you about, where we have a dual duplicated exchange point between 2 people. This is a waste of time and money. This is a PR exercise. It's not an exchange point. And some of the exchange points were, in fact, that sort of thing. Some of them were opportunities to sell transit, not real exchange points. But building an exchange point is really, really simple. It takes one switch. That's all it takes, and a place to put it. But it also takes people who are prepared to connect to it, who are prepared to understand that what they're doing when they're selling access to the internet is selling access to each other's networks. When you have an exchange point, a whole lot of things come out of that, which we'll address just now. And in terms of the figure of merit for exchange points, we ranked these countries who had the exchange points. They're the ones who had the 36 exchange points between them. We ranked them in that order. We also looked at internet usage as a percentage of the population, and Kenya scores top there, followed by Morocco and the Seychelles. We identified out of all this research that there are a number of issues which are key success factors to having a thriving internet model. And they are that you need to have infrastructure to facilitate affordable access to the internet. So you've got to have enough infrastructure, and it needs to be wide enough spread, and needs to be cost effective, cheap enough, and it needs to be fast enough. You need to have sufficient digital awareness within your population, and you need people who can read and write. It's hard to use the internet if you're not literate. You need a conducive policy, regulatory and governance framework, and you need payment gateways to ensure easy payment of fees. We spoke about that yesterday. You have to have a sensible price. If it is not only cheaper but easier to register a .com domain than it is to register a CCTL domain, what are your citizens going to do? They're going to register a .com domain, which almost certainly means that it's going to be hosted overseas, so you don't grow your local industry. It needs to be easy to register a domain. You need to have no complicated rules in the way, and you need to have a simple process. And if you do all of that, then you get enough. You must instill confidence in your brand, your CCTLD brand, and you will reach critical mass, and you will start to be successful.
Okay, so now we're going to look at some conclusions and recommendations. So yes, it's a difficult area to work with, small numbers of domains per person, but the market is growing, no doubt about it. There are still too many hindrances to growth, so there's this need to simplify, automate, and push out that domain registration process. There's a general belief that domain names need to be cheaper. From an overseas point of view, the average cost of an African domain is $84 compared to $10 for a .com. So it becomes rather simple for a person to rather go .com rather than an African CCTLD. So essentially the countries with the highest revenue are actually those who have the lowest non-zero prices. Some countries got it right. So internet access, obviously issues must be addressed, cost availability, etc. Policies and investment to support e-commerce. There needs to be, e-commerce is a local enabler of domain names after all. Countries without local hosting need to build exchange points, data centers, fiber networks, etc., so that network operators can talk to each other. And cross-border fiber is vital to all. I know that when a country starts up its internet for the first time, its first desire is to get their connection to overseas, but to either to Europe or to the Americas or something. But generally speaking, if you actually look at where the money goes and you follow the money, you find that the country is more likely to be spending money or transactions with its neighbors rather than necessarily overseas. So cross-border fiber and talking to your neighbor is a lot cheaper and a lot more useful. If governments offer services online, then the people will also use the services online rather than standing in lines, and that's good for everybody. It encourages, of course, freedom and expression online, and everything grows together. We believe in a low or cost recovery, but not zero fees for registering a domain. We do not like what Freenom is doing. It's not generating true value for the economy of those countries. We would like to see rules that do not require the domain registrant, or the registrar for that matter, Kenya, of having a legal presence. I'm going to pick on you, don't worry. Of not having legal presence in the country. That means then that you will simply make more money, I believe. Rules which do not require the domain names to match the name of the business or personal name. There are a number of domains where you have to send in the company certificate, and that's the domain name you get. That denies people from doing more imaginative things. So, for example, in South Africa, we've got a little organization called SAB, or the South African Breweries. They have a whole bunch of different brands. If we adopted that policy, they would have one domain, SAB. As it is, you hear of domains like Castle, Lion, Amstel, etc., and we all appreciate that. So that's why we say that. Aside from that, I was looking at the numbers of disputes that we have in South Africa. So we have over 1 million domain names, but the average number of disputes per year is about 40. So it is a very, very small amount. So it's worth doing it.
That's the maximum.
Max, okay. And sometimes it's a lot less. I think we're about 27 or something so far this year. So, you know, we train people and they work well. A functional and easy-to-use registry landing page. One of the things that we did to find where registries were was to use the IANA web system. There is a URL on there, and that is technically the landing page or the place which would explain how the DNS in that country works. Some countries, if you go there, you get PHP errors, or you see something that was probably written in the 1980s or something. Let's be kind. That doesn't make sense. That's the first. If you don't know how to get a domain in another country, that's possibly the way you're going to try and find out how to do it, and you want that therefore to look good. Automatic procedures for registration, fulfillment, and payment. Obviously, usually using EPP and some other form of an online payment makes perfect sense. There was some debate as to whether the differences between Kenya and South Africa. So, I mean, really, is price really important? And we had looked at the price of we had looked at the international price for both South Africa and Kenya that people in the US, I think 101 Domains was offering for these two countries. So we looked at both countries. Both of them are very successful from an internet selling domain point of view, really. So the similarities, they both use EPP. Simple to purchase. Both have more than 100 accredited registrars, so finding a registrar is easy. Vibrant internet markets, early adopters of exchange points, a population of about 50 plus minus each, so no issues. Differences. The internet penetration, Kenya is 80% of 46 million. ZA is only 50%, so Kenya much higher penetration. However, if you look at the number of .coms to CCTLD ratios, Kenya has 5 .coms for every local CCTLD. So the .coms are outselling the local CCTLD, 5-4. In South Africa, we only have 1 .com per every 4 CCTLD names, ZA names. So only a quarter of our people, only 20% of our domains in South Africa are .com. So there's a huge difference. Kenya versus ZA charges. Well, like I said, initially when we were doing the study, we looked at the external prices. But perhaps in looking a little bit closer, it would seem that Kenya's prices are actually almost as good as South African prices. Kenya doesn't allow international registrars. Told you I was going to pick on Kenya. And yet ZA has sold 20 times as many CCTLDs as Kenya. So the Kenya versus ZA charges, the prices in Kenya has come down, and I think that will reflect better and things will change. And I'm also sure that Kenya doing things at the second level will also change the story slightly as well. But the conclusion that we had is that price really is important. If it's cheaper to buy a .com, most people will go off and buy a .com. Do you want to do this one?
Okay. We looked at some of the barriers to selling domains, and we found an average of 55,000 domains per country. And if we took out the free nom countries, that came down to 29,000. And if we took out South Africa, because South Africa is just, with 1 million domains, it distorts the figures enormously, we got 9,000 domains per country as an average. Only 12 countries beat that. So if you like to think about it that way, only 12 countries, apart from plus South Africa, are successful in terms of selling CCTLD domains. And then if we looked at the local presence rules, the countries that had no restriction on domain, where you can come from to buy domains had an average of 86,000. Excluding South Africa and the free nom countries, it came down to 13,000. Whereas with the local presence, the countries that restrict the local presence sell less than half as many domains. They sell 5,000 compared to 13,000. And there are 13 countries that restrict registrations to locals, so those 13 countries are selling less than half of what they could be selling, simply because they're restricting registrations. In terms of registration methods, again with the average domains per country, those who have an online mechanism, either a web page or EPP, selling on average of 78,000. Again, taking out the high-value ones, we get 40,000, but those countries with a manual or email-based system are only selling 4,000, 1/10 as many. So an automated system that's easy to use, whether it's a web-based or preferably EPP-based, you're going to sell 10 times as many domains. And in terms of price, the cheaper countries, and this is based on their international price, those ones with less than, I forget the number, $50 or something, they sell 6 times as many domains as the more expensive countries. So we... Yep.
My turn. My initials. So, effective business model and marketing, making sure that the consumer is aware. These are great strategies to use. In other words, getting your domain, or rather making sure that making sure that your domain is what the local radio station is using, and the TV system is using, and if you can, your national airline carrier. Get them to use
FlySAA.com.
Yeah, well, never mind. We missed that one. But that's I believe one of the success factors that we've certainly had in south of here. The appropriate regulatory and governance mechanisms need to be in place. The use of the 3R model: registry, registrar, registrant. A sufficient number of registrars, at least 20. So that there's adequate competition. And the whole point of the 3R model is, in fact, to allow for competition as well. Simple, quick, cheap dispute resolution system, ADRP, alternative dispute resolution process. If you get that in place, then it means that you don't have to have strange systems where you vet a domain name registration before actually processing it and stuff like that, which means that you can then have a totally automated system and then just pick up the bad eggs as they go along. So we've been sort of talking more about the registries and their role in the game, but registrars, what does a registry really want? They want a domain to be registered, and they want it to be renewed year after year. They don't want it to disappear. There's not much they can do about that, though, but the registrars can. And the registrar's business should also be registering the domain and then keep it going year after year. And how can a registrar do that? Well, I believe that when a domain is created, you need to instantly add value. Add a localized email service. So once a user is using your email, it's damn difficult to get them to change. Users are very reluctant to change their email address. Also, when I pick up a business card, if it's got a Gmail address on it or a Yahoo address on it, I say, well, why are you advertising another company on your business card? That doesn't make sense. You should be advertising your own domain, your own company on a business card. And then, so that's the mail story. The web story is, why don't registrars provide an next to nothing or an almost free basic one-page website? If a customer has a website that describes the basics about his business, his address, contact details, localized email address, then he has something that he wants to keep. He doesn't want to lose after a year. And that's not too difficult. I looked at that from a personal point of view, and I ended up doing a very simple, cheapy package. So for under 300 Rand per year, which is not much money, I don't know, $50 or something like that, the person gets 3 email addresses, and it's a basic web page. Now, the other problem with websites is that you can end up spending a fortune and getting someone else to design them for you. So I had a little template. I built myself a little template. So a person fills in a few boxes. You've already got their telephone number and email address. It populates a very simple web page that the user can choose, and they can have a website up and running within 5 minutes. So within 5 minutes of registering a domain name, that user walks away, that end user walks away with local mail and a local website, which hopefully he'll want to keep the next year.
If we look at the growth of domain names in Africa, it's a little misleading, because if you look at all the country codes, with 3.5 million of them as of May this year, we saw a 31% growth. But that is very misleading, because what has happened is that the 4 freedom countries, the domain hack countries, have 2 million domains, and in the last 6 months they've grown by 56. Annualized figure of growth is 56%. So most of that 31% is coming out of that. And the COSAR domain, which is the biggest, but is a mature market. So it's only growing basically at sort of GDP plus, well, okay, South Africa's GDP, if South Africa's GDP was growing at 5%, we'd be really happy. It's in a recession at the moment. But it's a mature market, so it's growing at about 5%. So what we get is, and the GTLDs are growing by 50%. So what that means is that, in fact, the CCTLD domains, excluding the freedom countries, are only growing at 4.5%. So this is not good enough. Yes, it's $52 million, but it's not enough, in my view, for us to achieve the growth we want to achieve in that. So, and why is this important? Important because domain names are part of the whole internet ecosystem. So if you have local domain names and you have an internet exchange point and you have a local data center, somewhere to park a computer, you're going to grow your local hosting. And if you grow your local hosting, you're going to grow the industry. And that means means the ability to build data centers, which requires physical buildings. It also requires people to sell and engineer and design and maintain UPSs and generators and air conditioners and fire protection and security systems. It also means that you need to have servers, so you'll have people building and buying and maintaining the hardware and coding and maintaining the software and the websites. And all these things are building skills. And all these things are giving jobs. And all these things are increasing economic activity and growing the economy of your country. And the more you do that, the more local content you grow, and therefore people become more inward focused. Instead of doing all their traffic being overseas, it's going to become more local. So your local content grows, and your national network grows, and internet access becomes widespread, faster and cheaper, and your economy grows. So this is the bigger picture that one needs to be aware of. It's not just about domain names. It's about what do domain names bring you. At the end of the day, they bring wealth to your country. They bring jobs, and they bring skills, and they bring an improvement in your economy. So Mark's going to tell us briefly about some business models. We've already spoken about the ecosystem.
15 minutes, okay. Okay, so registry, registrar, and the ecosystem. Let's move on. So registry. If I 23 years ago, I held up my hands and I offered to run this co.za thing, not knowing quite what I was getting into. And the people, well, that's what I did. And we started small. Essentially, it was a very small organization. The other board members of, as we called it then, Uniforum SA, there was about 5 of us, but it was basically being done more or less by one person with another person coming in at the month end. So we started small.
And I might point out that they were all volunteers and they were all unpaid.
It was a job of, it was a passion at the time. We used open source software. I wrote a system that would interpret emails arriving. It's not what I would do now, but it certainly worked back then. All Linux based, etc. We focused on making it automatic, on helping numbers grow. We were doing this in consultation with the community to a huge extent. That was part of the deal. We made things simple, fast and cheap. Simple, you sent through an email. An email was all the rage and the easiest thing to use back then. Fast, an email, emails did work quite quickly. If an email came into the system, it was picked up automatically and it was processed immediately. And you would have a domain up and running within 15 minutes. Cheap, there were no huge costs. So we were keeping costs pretty low. There was no fancy offices. It was done in the back of in the back room rather than the back of a garage, but you get the picture. We didn't have a large board or anything. And we had, the initial business plan was to have one employer, half day. So the overheads for payment to another person was very, very low. And that person was there to do bookkeeping, to make sure that the money came in, etc. And yes, we did do traveling, but we weren't using the funds to do a huge amount of traveling. The traveling we did was to benchmark ourselves against other people doing similar work, to make sure that we were doing the right thing.
And today, much of that can be done virtually anyway.
The registrar starts small. Use open source software, cPanel and things like that. Use a hosted environment, a virtual machines, etc. Technically, you need a couple of machines, at least 2 name servers at least. You can share other services on them, but you don't need a huge setup. And then do it as a hobby until it's big enough. I used to work for Olivetti, one of these big companies, and I was very apprehensive of going it alone to do this job as a registrar, until the point where one day you looked at what the registrar was earning me and I looked at what Olivetti was paying me, and then it was obvious it was time to move over completely. but then again, I had that option. So, you know, working part-time until it's big enough, which also implies making things as automated as possible. And yes, sure, adding these value-added services, etc.
Okay, we're going to have a few words on the DNS Observatory. We recommend that we set up a DNS Observatory in order to enable us to track changes in the use of the DNS system in Africa. And essentially, as you saw in the beginning, we used 4 different approaches to gather the data. One of those was analyzing zone files. We didn't have enough zone files by a long chalk. We didn't have enough data in all sorts of fashions. We had 22 countries didn't respond to the survey at all. 0 from Tanzania, by the way. Out of 28 who were invited to take part. And so, in terms of the DNS Observatory, we see this as having two prongs, if you like. First of all, there's the zone file side of it. If we are able to offer CCTLDs and second-level domains within Africa a secondary name server, and we hope this would grow to become an any cost server with time, that would then have benefits to both parties. Firstly, it would mean that the CCTLD or the registry operator would have a free Mahala secondary domain name server at multiple locations, which provides robustness and provides improved performance. And also, the registry operator will have access to very detailed statistics on those domains. From the point of view of the community as a whole, it means that we will then be able to take snapshots of those zone files and analyze them and measure the growth of the zone files. And some of the stuff that we will do with the zone files is what we've been talking about here. What we did is we analyzed those zone files to identify whether there's a meaningful website or not on them, and the figures, the percentages of websites between countries that had substantial websites was varied quite widely. And as Mark has explained to you, if you have a website, then the domain is much likelier to be maintained. So that is something that is in the registry's interests. And we also are able to analyze the location of it, the language of used on the website, where the name servers are, and whether they're using IPv6 and DNSSEC and other interesting technical things. So we can provide all that data to the registry operator, so the registry operator will be able to improve the marketing and grow their sales. In addition, we mentioned we had the online questionnaire tool, and we see the DNS Observatory putting the two together. Once that tool is built, it's a relatively simple process to invite people to take part in the questionnaire on a regular basis. And I might point that we would change the survey to simplify it. It was too long, and we will spit out a part of it, and we will update that. But we see that as the two different parts of the data collection, and then of course there is then analyzing that data in terms of automatically generating a whole lot of up-to-date data, graphs and tables, which can show the development of the domain names on the continent. And we see that as something that will benefit the African domain name community and the African internet community as a whole. And obviously, in order for that to work, we need buy-in on that, and I believe Pierre would like to discuss that during today. We have some more subjects on that subject coming up, but thank you very much. we welcome your comments, and please download the reports.
Well, thank you very much, William and Mark, for this presentation. Of course, we gave them close to 1 hour to have an exhaustive presentation on this report. Now we do have, okay, there's no challenge per se. Maybe we should just give 5 to 10 minutes to Serge so that he also come up with the kind of data collection exercise they did on a set of African countries, so that maybe that also gives some perception. So with all this in mind, then we'll open up to your question and comments, before then we really tackle the observatory, issue. So Serge, please, if you would like to take a few minutes to quickly introduce what you did and explain to us how you didn't share those data with SSCF group, but that's another issue. Sorry, go ahead, Serge.
Thank you. I will speak in French. I do thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I have to say that this was a study which was organized, carried out within the International College of this is an international institute within French-speaking countries for the benefit of our population, and which has which is an institute putting together more than 20 institutes. So in 2007 we carried out a survey. Well, I spoke about a study, but it was a survey which allowed, to come up with, collect some data, especially CCTD, who are members of the Francophone countries. Now the objective, this was a study which took almost 1 month, and the results showed that despite, the problems within our countries, we have managed to carry out, coordinated development of CCTD, and this allowed us to come up with information for the organization of CCTLs. I'm going to dwell rapidly in my presentation on 5 main points. Quickly, I'm going to talk about the context, and I'm going to speak about the population which was, studied. Later on, I'll dwell on the conclusion in order to situate the interpretation of data collected. At the level of the context, as I said earlier, this is a study which was carried out within 1 month, that was after June, that is from 1st of June up to 31st of June in 2016. And this study hinged on 4 main points. So we analyzed the organization of CCTDs of the International College. So we analyze the axis of improvement in relation to each CCDR. So we are interested on marketing aspects of CCDs, and finally a point. So we also dwelled on capacity building and also on sensitization, and also the use of quality standards within these countries. And so the population which was studied, I said there were 20 countries which were contacted, which are members of the college, and these are countries in the whole of African countries. These are Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Comores, Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon, etc., up to Togo and Tunisia. In total, there were 20 countries. So this is a study which was carried out on 20 countries. What was the methodology used? So we elaborated a questionnaire which allowed to collect this information with a process of validation of these data. In the first phase of the study, many countries did not respond to the questionnaire, and this took time to gather all the information. So the questionnaire had 6 main chapters and 6 sections. At the level of results of outcomes, these are intermediary outcomes. For instance, concerning the management method of CCTLDs, meaning to come up with the specific model used in these countries. Is it a model of 3 hours or a model of 2 hours? We came up with interesting results which allowed a very interesting interpretation on the functioning of these CTLDs. On all the countries studied, so 53 of these countries, so they said they use the 3 hours model, and this is a model which is recognized by ICANN and all the internet organizations. Around 30% of countries surveyed, they use the 2 hours method. Here we have a registry and we have also registrars, but there exist some variations in these models because at the level of registries. In some countries, there is only one registry operated by the government, and others, you find just a registry operated by private entities. So these makes 30% of countries surveyed, and 15% of countries surveyed use a method which is neither R3 or R2. So this model, which is used, in time and space to just make, registrations. Equally, concerning the study, we were interested on another important element. It was about to see at the level of CCTL organizations the different, steps at the level of texts. To know if there is a use of a kind of a chart or the use with considering a legal framework and what are the measures put in place. So at this level, we came up with very interesting results. Major parts of these countries declare to have some regulatory texts which regulate the functioning of communications and the TIAC, and most of them have a specific text on CCTLD's management, and most of them do not have a text specifying management of CCLDs. At the level of a major question concerning accreditation, this accreditation of registrars, on 20 countries surveyed, 24. So we have 24 registrars who are accredited by a NIC. This is not an ICANN accreditation. It's an accreditation done within by registrars. Equally, we ask ourselves at the level of budgeting, that is budgeting, budget for functioning, where do resources come from? 33% of countries declared that resources come from the sale of domains, meaning there is an organization put in place which defines, on one hand, when there is a portion which goes to the registrars and another portion which goes to the registers. No, at the level of human resources used, at the level of these registers, the results shows that there is insufficiency of human resources. We on medium we obtain 1.6 person, meaning 2 person. On other countries, these are people who really participate in management of all the registers. So we have at least 3 people for registering registries. For marketing, there's 1 person at the level of meaning people in charge of commercial activities. There is only 1 person. At the level of support to the customer, there is 1 person. Here, when these are supports which can be linked to the technical side, and these are people who can carry out some modifications on registries or on the domain names. Another question which was important for us, it was about the number of registered domains at the level of CCTLs. I think on the 20 countries, we got a medium of 8,500 domains which were registered. And among the countries, there is an exception. We have Morocco, which registered 61,000 names of domains, and this represents more than 65% of all the countries members of the International College. The question which followed was about it was to know who detains the domain names. The idea of appreciating the number of domain registered at international level, these constitute a very important parameter for the functioning and of the evolution of domain names in a country. So we obtained that 82% of concerned countries, the names of domains are registered at national level. And we wanted to know about the segmentation as far as entities were concerned. Around 76% concern organization from the public sector, and about the private sector we have 80%. At the level of associations, we noted 76%, and from individuals we noted 52%. This means that quickly that I have made an overview of data we managed to collect regarding the survey. I would like to remind that this survey aimed to have within a short period to obtain data from these CCTLs, information that would allow us to follow the evolution of these CCTLs. So in conclusion, we can say that the main stumbling blocks we come across concern organization, management, at or at the level of these CCTLDs. The main question have to do with governance with all these CCTLDs. It was a complementary survey to the study carried out by ICANN. So we recommend that a follow-up be done on the evolution of these CCTLs, and these will allow to our leaders to know what areas to improve and the different measures to take in order to develop our CCTLDs. I thank you for your attention.
Merci bien, Serge.
Thank you, Serge.
Open up to your question and comments on the DNS, study. Of course, we did have some complementary information from Serge. So let's do this for the next, 15 to 20 minutes, for your questions. So the mics, are there. I think you can just come, and then the floor will be yours. And then we'll then have a last session on the observatory specifically. So whoever has any question or any remarks or contribution to the report, presented by William and Mark, and also by Serge, please come forward. Thanks. Okay, Komoro.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ali Haji, Vice President, Chairperson of ILTLD. I wanted to thank the speakers for the study that has been carried out. This is a study that has covered almost all the aspects, and this is going to make it possible for us to develop our CCTLD, because this study has made it possible for us to understand the infrastructures, it was also told we know that in our countries we have not deployed the optic fiber, and which would have made it possible for us to develop our internet system. Equally, the study has made it possible to has given us some proposals which have to be followed by some observation which is going to help us move forward with our CCTLD. There are some CCTLD which are requesting very high prices. We also talked about the automation of a CCTLD, which can contribute to the development. There was also the mode of governance, which is very important, because when we listen to the analysis that was carried out by the International College, we can understand that there are some aspects which are very important as well. We can also realize that the legal framework was very much used in this analysis. And there's also the marketing aspect and communication aspect, which are very important, and we should not forget the technical skill which can contribute to the development of the internet. Taking all that into account, I can say that it's like we find ourselves in a restaurant where we have some guests who are coming, whereas the food has already been consumed by the guests who were there before. So if the restaurant is serving, and if there are no guests, it means that the food will never be consumed. So it means that we have to take into account all these aspects in order to move forward. By that, what do I mean by that? I mean that despite the deployment of all this infrastructure, if we do not think about what we can get as income for the job, this is going to have an impact on our infrastructure. The question that we keep asking ourselves, are we taking into account what we can receive as income from what we're doing? When it comes to the FTLD, we continue to think about all these aspects. We would like to make these studies sustainable, and we would like to find the ways and means of our CCTLD to play its role. We have realized that there are so many CCTLD which are giving a lot of importance now to the FTLD, and there are so many people are doing that. That's the reason why the FTLD is getting ready to work more and more with the result that that can be drawn from this study. And the analysis that has been carried out by international college is a very important job. So FTLD is ready to forget about some other aspect, but move forward toward the concretization by using all the aspects that you have underlined in your presentation. Do you have a question? Do you have a question? Can you please ask your question? No, I do not have any question to ask right now. I just wanted to make some comment in relation to the presentation that was made, and I also wanted to say that FTLD, which I represent here, is ready to take into account all the aspects that has been underlined in the presentation. Thank you.
Any observation? As far as the study is concerned, I see none. Then means that, as we said, that was a kind of premiere, meaning that we do have a tool that is there now, and the idea is going to be to what do we do after that? Oh, sorry. Oh, we have a rep from registrars. Okay.
Est-ce que nous pourrions avoir le lien pour
What is the link between the two studies? My name is Victor Chiza. I'm a registrar.
The link to the different, to the studies, but I think the study is already available on ICANN's, website. We'll make sure that you have those links, please. Okay, then let's move on to, oh, sorry. Lucky, please.
Thank you. There are some quite interesting recommendations in the conclusions that have been made in this study. And I'm wondering how and what will be done to get them implemented. And one of those is the price issue, which we have seen clearly what it does to the uptake of the domain names. I'm raising this as a concern equally because we have now a new domain name, .Africa, which will be pretty much crossing borders. There will be no limitations to the uptake. And if you compare the price of .Africa to the prices that were shown in the study, it will definitely be creating a lot of disruption in the market, And what should we be doing? Should we be discussing issues of price as the forum here to ensure that at least there is a harmonization of prices? There is also another issue that was raised in the study around the technology. The comparison that was done on Kenya and South Africa has demonstrated or depicted the core areas that have a huge impact to the domain name uptake. And if we do not address those, or at least have a mechanism or a discussion that we would reach and say, this is what the DNS Forum is about, harmonization of prices, harmonization of policies, harmonization of technologies. I think these are some of the issues that I would like to hear the forum make or take a position on the study, at least. Otherwise, it remains a beautiful study, And until we take a position on how we are going to implement it, we change it from more to be a beautiful study, but a functional and a practical tool for all of us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lucky, for those interesting points that you are raising. Actually, I have said, well, maybe we open it up to FTLD to have a concrete discussion, debate, with you, because what you said about the disruptive environment that we are going to live through, I mean, that's quite important. But okay, let's hear from the audience and then eventually from our panelists, and we move forward. I see Bob. Yes, Bob, please.
Thank you, Bob. Is my name. Just very quickly, maybe to Victor. So maybe Pierre mentioned this in the start. So we actually extracted a summary of that report for the benefit of those who might not read the whole report. So if you visit the ICANN table, the exhibition space, there is a flyer with that summary. And at the end of that flyer, there's a link to the full report on the ICANN website. So you have both the full report, you can access it, but you can also actually read the key outcomes from that flyer. I would really urge those of us in this room to please take some time. If you can't read the whole report, at least to read the executive summary and the recommendations. I think it would really add value. Thank you.
Thank you for this information. Yes, definitely we do have those flyers, with statistics and everything, and derived from the study. So please help yourself. Yes, any response to the very important, question that was put by Lucky? Maybe William.
Yes, I think it's thank you for the comments. I think it's important to recognize that this is very much a baseline study. It's the first time it's been done in Africa, and it gives us a point to measure our progress in future. Future studies will enable us to determine how well we're doing going forward. But having a baseline, having a fairly comprehensive baseline like this means that we know where we're starting from and we can then improve from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I said, that was a tool, and then now we expect that that could eventually facilitate, the work for those who like to get involved in this sector. So Pierre Bonis wanted to, yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pierre. Thank you for the study that is very important because it's a milestone, the first comprehensive study, as you said. Just wanted that at this point of time to remind that the exercise that we launched, the 20 or plus members of the AfNIC International College was just out of a kind of frustration because we talked about an observatory for 5 years. And we just asked our members if they could give us and share some numbers. And that was easy as it is. No explanation, no analysis, just the proof of concept that if we ask people in good faith to share their numbers, they will do it. Because, of course, sometimes you have some fears that my numbers are not good enough for me to share it. I don't want people to know that I have less registration than my neighbor or things like that. But step by step, transparency is progressing. And without these numbers, we cannot build any analysis at all. So that was just to make this point and to say that as far as the members International College are concerned, this first very, very simple exercise, which has nothing to do with the study that is very comprehensive that has been presented today, we just want to give it to AFTLD because we really think that this is the task and the duty of a CCTLD regional organization to make sure that the data is correct, that the data is collected, and that it can be used by all its members to benchmark, to know what works and what doesn't work, and to know how the market is growing. So this is exactly what we want to do, give it away to AFTLD, and through the Collège International that has been involved for now 15 years in supporting some initiatives in Africa about the internet, support AFTLD for AFTLD to have the financial means to put in place a simple database that can be filled by CCTLD managers. The approach we have, and I will finish with that, is that we really believe that this is up to the CCTLD manager to give away this information. Not the regulator, if the regulator is not the CCTLD manager, not the government, not a third party that say, oh, I think that this CCTLD or that CCTLD has that performance. This is up to the manager to share this information. And it fits very well with the kind of membership that has been built within the AFTLD. So that was really the point I wanted to make and the commitment I wanted to do. The second point is that in terms of the findings that we have in the observatory, the DNS observatory in Africa, I just want to make a very, very quick statement. For 15 years we discussed that together, and I'm really impressed that the first findings and the first element of context that are shared within the main study that is presented are telco findings. We are talking about bandwidth, we are talking about IXPs, we are talking about international connectivity, and this is a lesson to be learned for those people who are involved within the internet in Africa for years and years, that we have spent years telling that telcos are not important and the important is the internet, and we know now, and we figure it out very clearly that without having a link with the ISPs and the international telcos, there is no way internet can develop. And I think this is a first lesson learned because together within the internet community, we have not faced this reality for years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for those comments and also putting a challenge on FTLD. And you also raised the issue of data collection. Our consultant here, they didn't really insist that much on what they went through, but I think it was a great issue, getting those data from Africa. And we believe that the observatory certainly could be one of the way where we can update the information and eventually encourage everyone to contribute. So what we are going to do now is we're taking maybe 10 to 15 minutes to then go through the DNS observatory, especially on some of the eventually questions that I would like us to be bear in mind and see how we move forward. Actually, what we would like to have, ICANN, is partners, is eventually kind of action plan. Because question that's been put to us is, okay, what next? What do we do? Okay? Observatory is one of the things we could be doing. And I've also seen some other avenues, like Lucky pointed out. we need that we really dwell on those and actually have a profound discussion on the DNS environment in Africa. This observatory actually idea came with the what we call the Africa strategy, where the African working groups came up with those strategy, and one of the recommendations there was to establish a mechanism that will help really collect data on DNS in Africa. It was about committing and conducting a study on business feasibility of growing DNS industry in Africa. This study is there for that. And commission an observatory to develop new indices for DNS industry growth in Africa. That's where we are now. The study was commissioned 2016. Now you have the reports online. Now we would like to be moving to the implementation of the observatory itself. So here you do have a few kind of question or issues that we should be facing, and I'm going to read them, and I would like to hear from you your ideas and suggestions for the way forward. The mandate of the observatory will be to collect and publish data on DNS market, conduct qualitative and quantitative research, development and engagement with other DNS research entities, collection and dissemination of research report, press report and data, including by means of, well, I don't know what's here, relevant research relevant to the DNS market. Now, we certainly need a kind of institutional arrangement for that. So, question could be, are we talking about new entity, or is it about partnering with existing organization? If a new entity, how about staffing, and budget, for instance? And any other partners apart from ICANN? In fact, we do have, I would say, some hints, of the answers, from the study. Now we really want to hear from you on the institutional arrangements. I know Francophonie was one of those who were quite interested in this observatory, and they were ready to kind of help start this thing. So Pierre is around. Pierre is the CEO of AfNIC, and that's why he's here to kind of maybe share one or two ideas he may have. But it's about implementation. It's really about concrete things that you guys would like us to do, concrete steps. What do we do, in terms of building this observatory from now on? So please, I would like to have maybe quick sort of suggestions, not big developments about it. I'm talking about action plan, so that we know exactly where we should be when by the next DNS forum, where exactly we'll have achieved. So please, Pierre, quickly your ideas, and then I will open up to the audience. Thanks.
Thank you, Pierre. I anticipated a little bit your question, I guess, in my previous intervention. When you talk about institutional arrangements, once again, if we are action-oriented, there are already organizations that are in place and that are able to talk to merely all the African CCTLDs, and I think this is AFTLD, so I think this is a good partner, of course with ICANN, because ICANN has been involved in this question for years, but I think the repository should be in AFTLD. I think it's not very complex to have a server somewhere where there is a small database that is accessible to CCTLD manager, and they can pour in this database the data that are relevant. Of course, I saw that there was the question of just sharing the zone file where there is a lot of things already. But even if it's not the zone file, because some CCTLDs have some are quicker to share the raw numbers than the zone file itself, let them do that also. It will give numbers for everywhere, from everywhere and from everyone. And I think there is a little bit of work to do. I think this is one of the main points, is who is asking the people to fill the database? Who is recalling the people that they are late? Who is maintaining a contact list where the contacts are accurate? This is not the most interesting job in the world, but if this job is not done, nothing can be achieved. And once again, I think this is something that could be done by AFTLD with the support, whether it is a financial support or better, even better, it could be a human support given by one of the AFTLD member. It can be done by this partner. So this is the very simple ideas that I would like to share. And once again, I'm really I think the first step is to collect the data and to make sure that this data is recognized as accurate by everyone. The next step is to find solutions and do studies, and there's a lot of people that are very clever that can do that. But for now, they are talking about something that is not very solid because we don't have data that is accurate for years, and we cannot compare what happens in 2017 and what happened in 2014, for instance. So we don't have the depth of the data that would help to have good analysis. And that's why on these very simple points, there is a commitment from AfNIC, and I'm very sure that we would not be the only one, because it's not also a very high-level commitment in terms of finance. It is not a very expensive project to help this project being achieved, as long as it is achieved by Africans and by a Pan-African organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Again, FTLD is put on the spot. I will add the registrars themselves that are in the room. So, question could be, what is FTLD? What are the registrars? Thinking kind of best way of starting this what I might call project. I would like to hear more on. So I've seen some of the FTLD people there. Oh, no, let's hear from FTLD guys there. Abibu, Abdallah, they are all here. So, seems that you are going to be tasked to do these things. So please, we would like to hear from you.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have said that FTLD is ready to make this work sustainable. And we really want to do so. We would like to make every effort possible in order to engage CCTLD, because we already support the different CCTLD who come to our country and asking us for our services. And we are available, and we are going to try everything possible in order to work in a concrete manner so that we have we carry out concrete actions which is going to be taken into account in our action plan. Thank you.
How about, because we really want to have some things that are quite concrete and the responsibility are well established here. We just heard kind of wish, from FTLD, but I was saying that it's not just about CCTLDs actually. So are you happy to think in the line of, establishing, I don't know, is it a working group, of course with FTLD and others, for instance, and how about setting up whatever the term of reference for that group and the timeline for producing anything? I don't know, I would like to hear from these sort of concrete things, because I don't want it to be on the level of just discussing and then good wishes, and then in 1 year's time we haven't done anything. Okay? Yes, please, Abdallah. I'll come to
Thank you, Chair. As the Vice Chair of FTLD has said, we CCTLDs are in support, and I think I know your fear is it turning into a talk shop, and then we leave tomorrow, and then we meet next year, nothing has happened. I think, yes, we can form a working group. Maybe you can try us. We can, as FTLD, we can give in this room a team for the working group. ISPs who are not members of FTLD can also raise their hands. We form a working group, and other community members within this meeting. So maybe we can see what's the good size of a working group to do. And then I'll request TISNIC to become the secretariat, because we are in their homeland, and we task them to ensure that the meetings happen. So maybe, I don't know, if the room agrees with that suggestion, and that's the position also as articulated by our Vice Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdallah, for this. That I wanted to hear from you, the room, whether his suggestion of building a team to work on that. Of course, if you agree with that, and I heard nothing, so maybe, yeah, sorry, you want to come up?
Paulo Nyirenda from Malawi, also FTLD ESCOM. I think there is need for a process, because the study was officially an ICANN study. So I know that FTLD is committed to running something like this quite well. We've discussed it before, and as the Vice Chair has said, we are willing to do it. But I think this started as an ICANN study, DNS study, so there is need for a process to hand it over to a task force, if we can establish one now. And I think that would be helpful, because the community will need to know how it was transferred from the study to such a task force to FTLD.
So if I understand you well, you like an official handing over to FTLD, and is that what you're saying? Sorry, but
I would like to see a process that does this. If it is an official handover, yes, but there needs to be some process for the transition. It's a transition process.
So by tomorrow, we may think about a process, and then we.
Peut-être donc jusqu'à demain, on aura pensé sur le processus. Ce que nous voulons, c'est donc nous approprier donc de cette étude. Je vais donner donc la parole au. Je pense qu'il est juste et approprié qu'un exercice donc de cette nature doit être mis sous donc, le contrôle d'une organisation. Donc,
AFTLD may be as good as any, I don't know, can't think offhand of a better one, but it is worth pointing out that this is not only about CCTLDs. Okay, that's a very important point. At the end of the day, the participants or the beneficiaries from the data coming out of this observatory will be the entire industry. And the bulk of the industry is, in fact, the registrars, not the registries. And as far as I'm aware, registrars are not members of AFTLD. That's the first point. The second point is that registries are not all CCTLDs. Okay, so for example, in South Africa, we have a COSAR, we have a ZA domain, and it has 15 entries in it. Big deal. There's nothing to maintain, there's nothing to measure. There are 15 entries, and those entries are static. What counts is the second level domains and what's under those zones, what's under COSAR, what's under ORG-ZA, what's under MIL-ZA, what's under EDU-ZA, under ACZ, School-ZA, ACZA, and so on, and all the NOM-ZA, all those different domains. And those different registries or zones are not all managed by the same entity. Not even in South Africa, where we have ZACR, which has the contract with the ZADNA to manage the several of them. There are other entities that manage some of those registries. And this boy does one of them, for example. Another one of our team members does the NOM-ZA domain. So these are also registries, and if we want a full picture, we need to have all the registries in Africa contributing data to the observatory. The next point is that it needs to be highly automated. We can spend between now, we can spend another 5 years talking about setting up an organization and staffing levels and budgets and. Or we can just get on with it and say, here's a certain amount of money, go and do it, make it automated, make it happen, and take out as far as possible, take out the human element from it, so that we don't have the situation that Pierre was referring to, other Pierre was referring to, about people lying about their figures. Let me assure you, we got people lied about the figures they gave us. We had to do some filtering and some research to correct some of these figures. Whereas if it's an automated process and you take out the human element, then you remove that temptation, shall we say. And you also significantly reduce the costs, and you make it faster, simpler, cheaper, quicker, better.
Thank you. Mark?
I want to work on the principle of lowest hanging fruit. You've seen this duet between William and myself up front, where we happily go through a presentation together. That's probably something to do with the fact that I spent almost every single weekend for the past year at his place going through this project, making sure that it happened. I can tell you that both William and I would be very excited to be a part of this project. We know some of the mistakes that we made, and we know how to correct those mistakes. On the other hand, I do actually think that AfTLD is the correct organization. It's the most visible one, and it's certainly one of the organizations, or its members are going to be the people that will be able to make the most dramatic improvements and at the end of the day make the highest increase in money, profits, etc. So I believe that's where, to me, the most interesting one. So I would really like to see AfTLD behind this, and very personally, I would like to, along with William, be the key players to run this totally automated system. I would love it to be like a secondary DNS server, which will be turned into an Anycast server. You should understand that any zones that are there will only ever be seen by ourselves, basically for the purposes of the study and for no other reason, but the zones will be shared and used properly from a DNS point of view, whereas the owners of those zones will be able to come and see really detailed information on the system. This is if we're using zone transfers and T-SIGs and all these other wonderful things, then there's lots of other interesting things we can do. We can build up a picture over time. Now, if you are, you as a registry, if you don't follow all the suggestions that we've got from the study, but you see your neighbor is, you can now compare your growth against his growth. And we can actually see if putting a particular policy into place actually changes scenarios by looking at things like growth over time. So I'm hoping that everyone doesn't go and follow all the suggestions that we've made. And I really believe this is something that we're going to be doing for the next 10 plus years, probably, I don't know. But this is not just a 1 or 2 year thing. And yeah, it really needs the buy-in of AfTLD at the end of the day.
Thank you. Again, Pierre, quickly, and then I know we should be closing in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Pierre, and then I'll go back to the audience.
Thank you. I would like, first of all, to apologize for the very narrow-minded intervention that I did before, talking only about the CCTLDs while you are talking about the DNS industry in general. Of course, I'm a little bit focused on CCTLD, being a CCTLD myself and being a member of Center and being working for that part of the industry for years. And I would like to apologize because I will stay focused on this part of the industry. Because I think that you cannot have everything at the same time. And you cannot ask the same questions to different parts of the industry. I think the competition between the registries themselves, when they are CCTLDs, are not of the same nature as the competition between the registrars. So they may give away some numbers that the registrar will not want to give away. So if we ask the same questions to everyone, no one is going to answer. That's why there's a lot of work to do, but for now, if I'm talking about the registrars and the registries in Africa, the data that is missing for years is the data from the CCTLD, and I think we can do it quickly. I don't say that there is nothing else to do in the other fields. I think there is a lot. I think there are people that are ready to do it, but as from the seat I am in, I think this is very important to get a tool to have this data accurate and regularly collected. And I will end with something else, is that as registries, we have a special relation with the registrars. And there is a huge difference, and everyone knows it here, between some big African registrars that are accredited to ICANN, for instance, and some very, very small structures that are hosting very small websites, and in some countries that are very important registrars for the registry. You will not ask them to automatize anything and to put something automatically in a database. They will not do it, but they are very important players in some parts. Thank you.
We do have 3 people here. Then I'm going to close the line, and then because the next session is about to start, it's going to be lunch. So please, then I'll take you then, and then back here, please.
Hello. So I'm Josiah Javola from AfNIC. I'm a researcher there. From our perspective, we would be interested to be involved in this, particularly on those aspects that involve DNS aspects that AfNIC is involved in. DNSSEC, for example, reverse DNS, and also root savers and so on. So we would be interested to participate from that perspective. But a quick question. We are also interested in performance. So I understand the mandate from what has been explained is more on to do with the market itself. But in terms of performance of DNS across Africa, is that something that would be of interest? Is that something that you think we would need to consider as well as we build this observatory? Because from our perspective, that's quite important as well. It speaks to, for example, placement and location of NIC servers, resolvers, and so on and so forth. So I just want to know if that's something that we can include as we discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you. The panelists will go back to your question later on. So now back here. You let the old one start first. Okay. Thank you.
Mine is very simple. When I looked at the mandate, I observed that we are being too geekish. We are being like geeks. I don't know how you are going to automatically measure the economic dimensions and development dimensions, which is an important part of your mandate. So this is just to illustrate that the issue is quite broad, and you have to reach out beyond this community, okay, to be able to achieve the full mandate. Meaning it's not just registries, registrars, and maybe other things, but you really have to go after the economic research institutions, the open data guys. I mean, there are things. I don't want to belabor. I just want you to appreciate that the mandate you set is deep, and we can only catch the beginning of that mandate. And there, the automated processes make sense. But in the larger realm of things, you need a little bit different thinking than majority of us here represent. I mean, and I mean it in a serious way, because some of the comments I heard from the presentations are, to me, leap of faith. Okay, the data may not even show it, but as engineers, we're trying to make some contribution in areas we have no expertise. I mean, I'm being very critical. I'm saying, let's be careful. When you get out of our technical realm, I don't feel safe. Okay, I think I'll defer to some other institutions that this is what they do for a living. They produce these economic indices for the UN, for countries, for so and so forth. And if you want to get your full mandate addressed, we'll have to get them in some way. But yes, I support the idea of AFTLD having a significant leadership role, but don't forget the registrars and don't forget the other institutions that I've cited. Thank you.
No, thank you, Ni. I think there was even mention of GDP, all of those things in the report. So you are right. We need to broaden the spectrum. Great, please. Thanks.
You can see why you always let him speak first, because he summarizes everything you need to say. But Karibu Moko, Drake, Chair, we're excited to be involved in this, and we would love to definitely give Mark some insights on how the rest of Africa can plug in. I think for me, my only comment was that the approach seems very technical, and we're discussing a user-facing conversation. And one of the things that we've realized, especially dealing now from a registrar to registry perspective, is that what you're then able to bring is your customer-facing angle to it. So I think that's, as I look at the report, registries only grow as your registrars grow, as the numbers of your registrars grow. So I think it's also something that, and looking at, I don't know how many registrar associations there are across Africa. I mean, it's something that we can then look at how we help spur that, because if the data already shows us that that's the way to go, then follow that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those useful contributions. We've taken note of them. Maybe before I kind of, quickly tell about the takeaways I'm seeing from here. Maybe 1 second to our panelists if they really want to add anything, and then I'll close this. Yeah, please.
Okay, I was going to quickly answer that performance issue and perhaps answer some of the geekiness behind that. We're building a car here. The first thing you need to do is get the car running and on the road before you start tuning it for performance. From my point of view, going for the low-hanging fruit, from a geekiness point of view, we want to get the zones being transferred, we want to get the analysts on the zones working, we want to be able to produce the data so that other people can also come along and take that data and use that in other research benefits. So, I mean, our study included APC and SACF members, and they do all of these economic things, etc., but they need that raw data there to begin with. What we're trying to do in our own geeky ways is collect that raw data so that others can use it. And just collecting that raw data has been not the easiest of jobs over the last 18, 16 months.
Thank you, Mark. Ni, I take your comments about the bigger picture. Yes, you're right. We do need to look at the bigger picture. We did, by the way, not only have engineers involved in this, we had economists as well. So it's maybe not quite such a leap of faith as you may assume. And we collected a great deal of data. But we didn't collect anywhere near enough data. And we see the observatory as a mechanism to provide a source of reliable data which can then be analyzed in a number of different ways. And some of the analysis will be within the observatory mechanism, and some of the analysis will be carried out by third parties, I'm sure. But always, good research has to be based on good data, and the observatory is a way to provide good data.
Thank you. Pierre, Serge, anything to add? Thank you very much. I think you guys are hungry. Yeah? No, I would definitely say that was a kind of good exchange here, and I would just like to point out that we kind of agree that, say, by tomorrow, the FTLD is going to take the lead to suggest us what we might call a project team. I think we agree to that. So FTLD will take the lead and then broaden the focus so that we do have, representation from kind of a different, board. And you may eventually also provide us your term of reference, of this sort of, what is the team going to really achieve, And then that will also give us the whole issue about the process that Dr. Nirenda was alluding to. And then maybe timeline on those things. Like we said, it will be bad that by next year, AFGNS in 2018, we gather and then we haven't done anything. We don't want it to be like that. We want to have to see results, So possibly, timeline will be fine for us. With that, I would like to really thank you all for the good exchange. And I think our panelists deserve that we kind of acknowledge, and then I would like to hand it over to Bob Barak to tell us where